bro. That would have been funny. All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of the iFilmmaker podcast. My name is Ariel Martinez, and with us, Mr. Saratelli, straight out of Jersey.
What's going on?
What's up, buddy? So we're coming back to you guys fresh from an amazing interview that we did with Ryan Connolly of Film Riot, which was fantastic.
Yeah, great interview. Can't wait to put that one out.
We had a good amount of people tune in live for that episode. And if you guys are listening to this live, it's not out yet. So it's going to be our 100th episode. We're prepping that episode up to release for our 100th episode. This is our 98th episode. After this, we have one more, and then we will be releasing our 100th episode, which is
that's crazy, man.
Ryan Connolly. Yeah, dude, the other day, someone had told, I don't know, I think it was you, that made me realize I've been doing the podcast for over a year now.
Yeah, no,
and
it's nuts.
I had not realized how fast this has gone. So I started listening to my first episode, which was me by myself. Oh gosh, I started cringing. Man. So it was
it's funny. I've looked back at some YouTube stuff too, and I still think I could be more peppy sometimes, but I look back and oh my gosh, it's like, and this wasn't even that long ago, 7, 8, 9 months ago. It's like feel like I look and sound so dull. And it's, you just evolve, on anything, whether it's on video or on audio. Just, your personality comes out more and more as you get more comfortable. So it's pretty cool to go back and see the difference.
Yeah, seriously. So anyways, with Ryan Connolly, it was an amazing conversation that we had with him. We spoke about everything from the beginning of Film Riot, how he started it, to his film, to his shorts, to some technical conversations and personal conversations. It was our longest episode. It was an hour and a half long, full of just Ryan Connolly, Film Riot knowledge and wisdom on the industry. How he does things and how he goes about doing other different projects. And it was a lot of fun. I gotta say. And I have to say something else about him. The way that he does Film Riot, his charisma, his character, his attitude is exactly the same way he is as a person. And I thought that was
that's really hard to find, man. That's pretty cool.
Like, yeah, absolutely. He's definitely not putting up a front.
Yeah,
he is the same exact Ryan Connolly that you see on Film Riot. So it's a lot of fun. Needless to say, it's a lot of fun. I've always thought
that's really hard to do, man. On here, I think I'm much more myself than I am even on my channel. Because on my channel, when I present stuff to try to teach it, and like I'm recording it in a format where I want to like say it correctly, I feel very like off the page per se,
Sure.
So a lot of times I don't feel like it's my personality. It's just me trying to like teach something. Whereas here it's like, we're just chit chatting on the fly. So like, it's me,
this is why I enjoy the podcast a lot, and I appreciate it, but here's the thing though. Like, so I think that there's a lot of leniency for that, because for example, for a show like yours, for Jersey Filmmakers YouTube channel, I think people go there to learn actual things. Like, you have a specific, very concentrated topic in mind, and you really want to get that information to everyone, as quick as possible, because people like me will go and search up, what is ProRes RAW, and I just want to hear the exact information about it.
Yep.
The podcast here, this platform is really for us to have a conversation about different things. Like, let's talk about ProRes RAW. Let's see how that might help me and why it may not help you. Different things like that I think it's good for conversation to have. And that's what really the podcast is for. This is a reason why it's a podcast. It's really, even though we do it live on video, but I think it's good that people can listen to this while driving, while commuting. And it's really just a conversation of us going back and forth and considering different options with regards to cameras and just different things like that. So I think it's a good thing to have as well.
Yes, it's not just me. It happens.
Got me. Dang it. I forgot to open up the chat box here where people have been writing here.
Danny Mirabal back on here. Good to hear from you, buddy. He said, "Do you think that being on camera versus being in front of a microphone affects your performances?" We are in front of cameras while we do this, actually. So, um, I don't think that's I don't think that's a difference maker. Not my opinion. I just think that when I do a video, I'm trying to keep it more condensed, and that I'm just so formatted in my head and what I want to get across that it's harder to be myself. I'm really thinking about what needs to get out there. Where this is just, I mean, we can free flow for as long as we want to. So this is not, this is formatted in a sense that we know what we want to speak about, but it's more real off the cuff per se. I'm not
Yeah,
saying
I
my
mean,
stuff's not real, but
yeah, it definitely it's definitely a different feel for sure because um like right now, I don't have to say everything to you guys fluently. And I think there's been times, I think there's been one or two times where I've made a statement, right? Just thinking off the top of my head. And a little bit further down the show, I actually changed my mind. I started seeing something that it was you that started saying something else. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's actually a good point. That being
yeah.
said, let me go ahead and change my
Point of
previous
view, yeah.
statement. Yeah, my point of view, because this is what this is about. And you guys don't, I mean, I don't know if you guys realize this, but even before we go live, this is how we speak. This is exactly what we're how we communicate with each other. This is exactly it,
Yeah.
so I mean, it's gonna happen whether we're live or not. And this is what I like about the podcast. I've
Yeah.
always wanted it to be very personable. So
Yep.
it's a really good thing to do it like this.
Yeah, I love it. But yeah, back to your point, Ryan was very much like
Yeah.
he was on his channel. It's really cool. He's the
And
same
what
guy.
exactly? So when that and you'll see him because we have an hour and a half long conversation with Ryan, and you'll see it. It's there. It's there. He's just literally that funny, and it just comes out natural in him. When the episode drops, episode number 100, probably sometime next week or so, late next week. You'll see it for yourself. You'll hear it for yourself. So that's really cool, and I definitely appreciate that from someone that puts out such great content. That he's extremely genuine in that sense. So,
Yep.
you know what? Let's go ahead and we definitely have some people joining live. Brandon Fountain, thank you again for joining. Danny Mirabal, all you guys that are joining us live. And for those of you that are not joining us live, check us out over on the iFilmmaker YouTube channel. Go and subscribe so that whenever we go live, you guys can be right here in our chat talking directly to us, and we're going to be answering your questions. And a lot of these guys actually write me online. I don't know if they write you online.
Yep.
And we communicate afterwards, and we can, they have questions. Sometimes I respond, oftentimes, and it's good. It's fun. I think it's great to build that community. So I encourage you guys to go over to the iFilmmaker YouTube channel, subscribe, make sure those notifications are coming in so you can get notified. I'm also trying to let you guys know when we go live through Instagram stories, whenever we decide to go live, whenever we have time, really, because like you have a flight tomorrow, so we had to do this today.
Yep.
Kind of things like that. So yeah, check that out. Also check out the Jersey Filmmaker YouTube channel. Mr. Cervatelli's putting out some great content over there, so check that out.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying.
Trying to get to that level, man.
Yep.
All right, so today we have a great episode for you guys. And so what I wanted to talk, I think it was last week I posted on my Instagram stories what you guys wanted to hear about. I had several people reply back with some suggestions. So, but before that, I think that, so you just finished an edit. You just finished a full-on feature film edit. And when I saw that timeline, I was blown away. I don't think I've ever done anything that big before. How long did it take you to do that?
Months, man, months.
Months. Okay.
I've never done anything like that either. So
I thought that was a great topic to talk about because we do edits all the time. I do edits all the time. I think the longest edit I've done was maybe 20-25 minutes, I think.
Yep.
That's not including, that's not including putting titles on a 8-hour long seminar that I recorded.
Yeah.
That's not really an edit,
Yep.
So that is
and was that though, like, was it a story driven where there's cut after cut?
Oh no, of course not. That was just literally just.
I'd love to, and I haven't done this yet. I want to count how many shots there are in this film, you know, so how many cuts there are throughout the whole thing.
Do it.
I'm very interested in that. Yeah, I'll do it at some
Should have
point.
had that ready for this episode,
I
man. You're
should have.
failing.
I know. But
Yeah, so
that's all right. We'll talk about this again because there's going to be more to come. But
yeah, definitely. We'll probably have a part 2 to this
yeah,
episode. When Mr. Saratelli gets that colored piece back. So yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about today. We're gonna go ahead and dive in to see what exactly you did, how you did it, why you did it, and so on. How you communicated with your crew, with the director,
yep.
all that stuff. Because I actually, this is pretty much gonna be your episode. So you're gonna just basically be dropping all these bombs on us. So let's go ahead with, I guess, when you first initially accepted the project, how
Yep.
do you know you're ready for something like that? I know early in an earlier episode, you talk about, you know, you wanted a challenge. So have you considered a feature before, or
I mean, features. I definitely narrative is something I'm very interested in, and whether it's feature length or short films, I do like narrative. And when the opportunity presented itself to edit a narrative, I was confident that I could do it, even though I'd never done anything like that. I just thought that, you know, there's a script, there's something written out for you, there's an outline, you know. So what I have to do is pretty much go through, and with the director, of course, pick the right takes and pace it correctly, but the story's there, so I don't have to create the story, although there is a lot of altering in post-production. And we spoke to Ryan about this, right? Like, there's the writing portion of making a movie. Let's say there's the writing portion, then there's the production, then there's the post-production and the edit, where every time the story probably changes somewhere a little bit somehow, you know. There's who knows how many drafts are when you're writing it. In production, there's definitely things that aren't going to go smoothly, and time is going to be a concern sometimes, and you might cut a shot, you might add a shot if you have time. Something might not work, and we ended up adding a title sequence which we didn't have in there originally, which helped the film a little bit as it gets going in the beginning. So there's all those changes there. And then in post, of course, especially in the edit, there's a lot of things that hit the floor, and then there's a lot of things that you weren't going to expect to be in there that make it in, and it kind of shifts your story a little bit. So there's so many different things that happen in each phase, that even with that, I was still confident that I was going to be able to physically put it together, and that extra creative was the incentive for me for like, oh, maybe I'll actually have like a little bit of a hand in this, which you have a huge hand in it. But I was just thinking like, oh, I just pretty much got to put what's on paper on screen. But it's a lot bigger process than that. And I learned that just recently. So,
nice.
So that was, you know, again, I was confident going in. I've always been the kind of guy, like, I don't say no to many things. If I don't know, we've talked about this, I say yes, and I'll figure it out before I have to do it.
Yeah.
So that's what I did. And the hardest part was the technical stuff, was how do I set up these timelines so that in the end, I know how to export them to get to sound, to get to color, and not mess that up. Because if you mess that up early, you're going to have a lot of extra work on the back end. You know? So that was my bigger concern. So I just consulted some people that I know that have done things like that. And I was actually pretty close. So that was cool that I kind of had an idea from what I've done before. Because I have pushed a couple things out to color or to sound before, never to color, but much smaller projects, but it works the same way. So, man, where to even start with this? So
let's go ahead and start.
Well, ask me some questions. That'll be the best way.
Let's go ahead and start with the beginning. When you were approached to do this, a project, a feature, right? Let's start with. I'm not going to ask you. Obviously, you quoted the person. Sure. How do you figure out how much to quote? Like, what I'm asking is, what kinds of aspects of this project do you consider before you give a quote? Meaning, right. Do you look at obviously the length of the film? And I think that for any project, you're looking at the length of it. What other things, like, to me, off the top of my head, what I think about is the project organized? Yep, how was it shot? What footage are we looking at? Audio files, is it directly in the camera, or do I have to sync that? So things like that, like, how do you put a price on something that you've never done? Because let's say, for example, they did not sync it. It's not synced. They at least slate it? Like,
Yep.
because all that stuff is going to determine how long you're going to be editing for. You
Yeah,
know, is it
exactly.
like the entire first week is just going to be syncing audio? Like, is that how it's going to be? So things like
So
that. Go ahead.
yeah, it wasn't sunk. Things weren't sank, however you want to say it.
So,
Nothing was synced.
thank you.
They did slate everything really well. It was very well organized, and I looked at the drive before I officially accepted it. Everything you said were all concerns, and were all taken into consideration. Actually,
Good. So for those of you listening to this,
yeah,
this is the part where
you
you
don't see this stuff.
this is the part where, man, if you're going to accept the project, this is definitely what I want to get to, and
Yeah.
obviously you're going to finish. You have to consider these things before giving a quote, before giving your word. Look, I loved it, and I actually didn't. That's a good point that you made. You looked at the project, you had the drive before you even accepted the project, so that you can physically see.
It was
Okay,
kind of like a tentative yes. I was like,
okay,
I want to do that. Like once we figured out, um, I read the script, I liked the story, I we agreed on financials, and I was like, okay, yes, but I need to see the drive first because I got to see where you're at. I got to see how this stuff's organized. Was I
sure.
gonna have like if I had to like find everything, I would have been like, sorry, you're gonna have to hire an assistant editor to get that all together
That's
because
so
that's gonna
good.
take a month.
I can imagine. I could easily imagine, like, a much more inexperienced me accepting a project without even looking at it. And for those of you that have not done a feature, consider these things right now, because you don't want to enter a project especially a long
Yeah.
project like that, and not know what you're getting yourself into.
And now that I know what it's like to sync that much footage, I won't I would let me start here. Going into this, I don't want to be an editor long term. Okay? And I knew that going in, and now
Sure.
even and after this, I'm not saying this was a bad experience or anything, but I officially do not want to be an editor long term. I just don't like sitting in front of the computer that long.
Oh
Okay?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love the process. The process is really cool. Like I would love to be the director in the edit room and going through all this. I just don't physically want to be the one on the computer doing it. But my God, I'm so happy I did it with the experience and everything I've learned from it. Great, and that's exactly why I got into it. I wanted to put my name on a feature, just to put that on my resume. So like everything I wanted it for, I got out of it. But I also all the things I thought about editing and editing something this big beforehand, I still think, if not more, afterwards. So that's just me personally, though. I'm not saying it's a bad
Right.
thing. I just don't like sitting here. It was just so much work.
Yeah.
But that being said, I don't even remember where we started
Yeah.
with this
No,
question now.
yeah. So, is there anything else that things that you did not consider?
Oh,
I
what
mean,
I
things
was
that you did consider that we
right.
haven't mentioned. So we
Well,
considered. Go ahead and list them out for me.
yeah. So syncing though is what I was getting at. There was that I knew it would take a while, but I didn't know how like it would take that long. Syncing it. The problem was
What
this
was
is
your?
the one thing. Okay,
What,
here's something to look for. Right.
go ahead.
They didn't capture good scratch audio.
Mm.
Okay. Sometimes they had a B cam, which didn't even have scratch audio. Everything was slated. It
Oh
was slated for
no.
the A cam, it was slated for the B cam in the same
Properly.
like all proper.
Okay.
But sometimes, a lot of times, and there wasn't always a B cam by any means. There was actually very little that they had it, but when they did, there was no scratch audio. So that was all by eye. You had to line that up by slate.
Oh gosh. How many?
Uh,
What percentage of all the footage did you
I
have?
mean, if it was 5%, it wasn't much, thankfully. Like not a lot of B cam stuff, but that was a pain. That was a
Okay.
huge pain and a time suck. But also just syncing in general, they're I don't know where they put the scratch mic. I feel like they put a mic on there, but they must have put it right next to the fan
Oh
because
man.
it was just a big buzz the whole time, a big hum the whole time. So because it was shot on red, so it was like right by the fan. It must have been right by the fan. Um, so the syncing mechanism in Premiere wouldn't be able to capture it very well.
Gotcha.
And I I tried pluralize once again. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing, but I just never have luck with that.
It's
So
so good.
I
It's
it
so
just
good.
wasn't working for me.
Yeah,
So
you gotta get on a. We
yeah,
got. I gotta show you that stuff.
we do. Maybe we do an
Uh,
episode on it.
Gotcha.
Um, but anyways, so I did them by scene as I was going. I would sync them, then I would do that scene, and it was actually not terrible thing for me because I kind of learned the footage that way. You know, if I would have went through the whole movie and synced the whole thing up front, I would have forgotten about scene 54 by the time I got to it. You know, but what I was doing was syncing the scene and then editing it. So I would literally have to go through every shot to put all the sound in, and I would see each take, you know, and sometimes I'd end up watching it all the way through. But what I would once I was done syncing, I would go through them again and take notes. But at least I like literally it was fresh in my mind, you know. So I saw it all, kind of just went through it. So that actually worked out. It just syncing just sucks. Period. So like
Yeah.
it was just if I know I said I wouldn't and I probably won't, but if I ever did and someone came to and dropped a lot of money on me to edit another film, I would definitely have an assistant editor organizing all that stuff. Like I
Yeah.
just that's just too much. I mean, and that's how it's done in Hollywood. You know,
Yeah.
it's done right away. It's
Oh, I'm
done
sure there's
on
assistant.
the daily
There's an assistant.
basis. You know,
There's an assistant to the assistant, and then
yeah,
there's
yeah,
another
for
assistant.
sure. You got the DIT moving it over. You got an assistant probably lining like syncing it right away. It's by the time it even gets to your desk, it's all set and ready to go. So, but that's indie film here. So like
Right.
I was syncing and I was editing. So yeah, that's another. So, but scratch audio is one thing I think you should actually look at if you're doing the syncing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you might be
But see,
syncing
those are
digitally.
things that those are yeah. So definitely that's those are things that I mean I wouldn't think about that.
I
I
didn't
wouldn't.
think
I
about
mean,
that
I
one.
see the slates is great. You know, I see the real audio. I wouldn't think of checking the scratch audio. So
Yep.
that's actually a good point that you make. So make sure, because yeah, definitely syncing is some. You know, unless you're using pluralized, brother, you got to get on that. But yeah, the make sure that the scratch audio is good. So that's a good point. Jot that down, guys. Um, so how much do you happen to know how much footage they had in total?
Time wise,
Yeah.
I don't.
How many
I don't even know how
clips?
to calculate that.
How
Um, clips.
was it shot on red? You said
It
you
was shot
mentioned
on
it.
red. Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? I'll open it up while we're sitting here. Maybe I could figure out how many clips there were, but I don't know the time. No.
How long more or less? Like so. All that being said,
Mhm.
how long more or less did you take just syncing?
Just syncing probably took me, I'd say, a week or more.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's a lot of.
Yeah.
So okay, I mean,
I'd say about a week. Had I sat down straight to do it, I'm trying to I'm trying to put that together. How I think it would have taken me about a week. So I have an editor that I use from time to time. And when I got to a point where I had him finish with some work, I actually like slotted him out for a couple weeks and was like, I have 4 or 5 projects. Like we're going to work on all these. He got them done a little early. So I had him sync some of the film. And
nice.
so the last 2 days I had him on the job for those 2 weeks, he was syncing and he did, I think I want to say like 13 scenes or 14 scenes in those 2 days. And there's 55 scenes. So yeah, I think about a week if you're kind of working on it full time, like the whole time.
Sure.
That's what it would take. And yeah,
Wow, it's a
yeah, it's
lot,
not fun.
man. That's a lot of syncing. So, did the director sit with you throughout all the entire editing
Sure.
process?
So up front, what we did was I would edit the scenes, and we used Frame.io, which I don't know if everyone knows about Frame.io, but it's a
Yeah,
very
really good
nice
stuff.
collaborative software that
We're
Adobe
using it
offers.
now for Scion.
Yeah. So we used Frame.io, which was great because whenever I finished a scene, I could just upload it and he could kind of check it out. So up front early on, um, I would edit scenes, upload them on there. He would make notes and then he'd come over and he'd sit with me and we would go through them and make all the changes. Then we got to a point where I couldn't stay ahead of him. Um, because like I said up front, I kind of did a bunch of scenes. I was excited to get going and I had time. And then I got a little bit busy. So he caught up watching the scenes and making his notes. And then him coming over would stop me from doing new scenes because we'd be working on the scenes that he made notes on. So we eventually like caught up. So then it was like he started coming by and we would do scene by scene and he would sit here while I went through all the takes. which was good in a way because he liked to see a lot of takes. And this is an interesting part to me is I've never worked with a director by my side like this. And this guy liked to see a lot of the takes, like I just said. So it didn't matter what I picked, if it was good or bad, he still wanted to see other takes. Okay. A lot of the times.
Makes sense.
Yeah, which makes perfect sense. I don't know if every director is like that. I don't know if they want to sit through every take or if they bring an editor in and trust them.
And believe me, it's better when they're with you, because a lot of my clients are like that. Well,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say a lot of them. Some of my clients are like that, and it sucks because they're not with me. So I have to send them the different takes.
Ooh, yeah.
And that makes it way worse.
Yeah.
So I'm super glad that I definitely personally I appreciate when they're sitting with me so they can see what's going on and they can see the whole thing put together. And plus, I think I'm more productive that way. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, sitting together was great in the sense that he got to see everything, so we could choose the one he wanted right away. But it took longer. It definitely took longer, and I had a hard time figuring out which would take longer, because even though he would want to see a lot of the takes from what I sent, like when I put the scene together, it wasn't every single one. But when we're sitting there together, he's seeing every single one. So it does take longer in that way, and it also kind of took away from my creative freedom. And early on, we agreed to this, was like, I'll cut the scenes, because, and we wouldn't talk about it beforehand. I had the script, but I didn't hear any of his ideas. He's like, cut it the way you want to cut it. And even if it's not what I'm thinking, when we get together, if I like yours better, we keep it. If I like what I had in mind, we go back to that. Like, so it was a cool collaboration in that way, where it took it out of his hands and let me be creative with it. And if it wasn't what he was envisioning, then we switch it back, but sometimes he'd be like, oh my gosh, I didn't see it that way. That's great. Let's leave that. So that was really cool. Yeah, that was really cool. So that's where I had my creative freedom, was like, he just let me run with the scenes. But then in the middle, like I said, we got stuck because he caught up to me and we were just ended up editing scene by scene together. That didn't happen for too long. And we finally, like, again, schedule wise, however it worked out, I finally was able to like sit down and do some on my own. And we got back to that workflow, which I liked a lot better. So that was me personally. But if you're editing a feature, or even if not a feature, a short, whatever, I like the idea of letting the editor, and if I was directing, I would do the same. I would say, hey, do what you do. And I could always pull you back, but sure. If I'm sitting there telling him exactly what to do the whole time, I might as well edit it myself. So that's definitely a good point.
So I recently, saw this Colombia trip. I had the director with me. She was sitting with me, editing the teaser for this thing. It was going to be, I think it's like a 2.5. It's already done. It's already done and pretty much locked. Obviously can't show it because right now we're kind of putting it on the market for a company to pick it up. But yeah, so we were able to get the whole thing done in like 2 days, because it's way more productive when, in my opinion, when they're giving me live feedback as to what can work or what doesn't work. But at the same time, she's not an editor, so she's letting me do my thing.
Yep.
She either likes it, but most of the things that she's that I'm being told is like, all right, well, let's try a different shot for this one. And that's literally like not telling me exactly how to do it, more or less. But she for the most part, we were able to flow really well. I don't usually get that luxury. I don't usually have my clients sitting with me.
Yep.
So it definitely worked out for sure. And that is my only experience with having a director sit with me and all that stuff. Right. So
let me mention too that the director was the writer director. So which changes things a little bit, because it's fully his vision, right? He wrote this. He's thinking out every single scene, probably literally down to sometimes the way somebody put emphasis on one word. He's like, oh no, I don't like the way he emphasized that word. And it's like something I wouldn't have heard, but he knows how he wants that to come across, right? And the directors do the same thing, but like the fact that he wrote it and directed it, he really, really had a vision, of his work. So I think that's a little different than your situation where in narrative, when it's going from a full no concept to he fully conceptualized this story.
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing
yeah.
at the
That's
end. So
definitely very different.
yeah, so it's so it was interesting though, just because like I said, sometimes he would see things that I was like, how, I didn't even notice that, man. Like, how? Why would you even think about that? But it was really cool. It was really cool to see that at the same time because he was so involved in his story. And I sometimes just overlook things because to me, if I saw it in a movie, I probably wouldn't have thought twice. But every little detail matters, man. And even if you don't physically catch on to it, you know, maybe subconsciously it settles in, and that's what helps tell the story. So it was cool to see how involved he was in every single little detail of the movie. It was nice. He really cared about his project, you know.
Gotcha. So I want to go ahead and take some quick time to get into this chat room here.
Yeah.
So Brandon mentioned earlier that he has to edit a feature next month and he's not looking forward to it.
Yep.
Well, just to start off, if you're not looking forward to a project, maybe you should start considering accepting other projects. But I understand sometimes situations are different. But then I love what he wrote after. I mean, I don't love it. I feel bad. And I'm actually going to give him bad news right now. He says, Jersey's making me nervous. I'm shooting a feature and I have to edit next month. And he said it took him a month.
No.
Do you want to correct him there?
Yeah, that it took about three to 4 months to edit. Yeah, and that's just okay. So now we have got a picture lock, and we're about 4 months in. It goes out to color. It goes out to sound. Color is 2 weeks, which I think is really fast. I think they just have a tight schedule, so they are just like grinding through it in 2 weeks. Sound is going to take 8 weeks. 8 weeks.
Wow.
So that's 6 months from start to finish.
Yeah.
Once we get sound back. So when color gets back, I'll have to do some some VFX stuff, kind of just like removing a sign or some stuff here and there. A boom gets in the shot.
Yeah.
But I could do that while sound is out. Then once sound comes back, we just have to go through it and make sure it's all kind of what we want.
Sure.
But yeah, 8 weeks they quoted.
Damn.
8 weeks. So yeah, dude, a month for a feature. I mean, if you're doing it on your own and coloring it yourself and sound, and you're not like, you know, working with other people, I hope you be sitting in front of your computer day and night. If this is a real feature length film, if you're saying feature length as in an hour, 10, 20, 30 minutes.
I think technically feature length is anything over 45 minutes.
Yeah, I think it depends on the festival, but it's like 45, 50 minutes. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So that's I'm not even gonna put that next comment he wrote. Basically, he's freaking out.
Also, I'm just reading it now.
Yeah,
it's over 100 scenes. All right, so the film I just did had 54, 55, 54, something.
Yeah,
like that.
So 100 scenes. That's a lot of flipping.
I mean, I don't know if the scenes are like 10 seconds in yours, because I mean, some of ours ranged anywhere from like 30 seconds to 5-minute scenes. You know.
Wow. Yeah.
Man, gotcha. Brandon, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like that's
I think it's gonna take you more than what would you seeing Brandon's comments here and anyone else that's listening that is considering it or wants to consider it, like starting off, what would like be the initial advice that you would give anyone considering editing a feature?
Editing a feature.
This is editing a feature, guys.
Yeah.
So yeah.
My advice would be, I mean, you got to know what you're getting into. I would assume you know you're getting into if you're trying to edit a feature film.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. We're talking young bucks here too. And when I say young, I mean people that are new in the industry.
Sure.
I absolutely did not consider. So I'm in the middle of a feature.
Yep.
And the reason why I'm still in the middle is one, we haven't shot everything yet, but we got into it very in an ignorant fashion, meaning I didn't know everything that I should have considered, you know. And we're definitely going to finish it because we definitely, you know, we gave our word and this is something that we're going to finish, but it's taking a lot longer because we didn't consider a lot of different things.
Yeah.
The amount of time to edit, the amount of time to shoot, everything, how much it's, you know, all of that stuff. There's several things that we didn't consider when doing it. And obviously a lot of you guys know the feature I'm referring to. It's A Horse of a Different Color. And I'm still in contact with the director for that film, Nick. And again, when I started this like 2.5 years ago, I think, and we're still in the process of doing that stuff. So Yeah, so I definitely did not consider any of that stuff. I
Yeah.
thought I did, but I didn't. So yeah, let's go. Keep going.
So, I mean, almost what you're saying, the biggest consideration would be to really, really look at yourself and say, am I ready for this? Have you edited short films that are 10 minutes long, 15 minutes long, 20 minutes long? Have you done any other type of work that has that sort of length? And it's just what we said earlier too. You said
Sure.
you've done some things that are 25 minutes or whatever number you mentioned, but
Yeah,
are those things where there's cuts back and forth between people and you try and tell a story, or is
right.
that more, it really depends. That's a different style. And look,
Yeah,
I have never done anything to this length even close myself, but I did feel confident that I was ready to do so. I've told stories before in shorter fashion. So I think the biggest consideration is to really look at yourself in the mirror before you do it, because it's a huge step. Just like you said, if you don't know what you're getting into, you're going to struggle through it, for one. And if you're getting paid to do it, if it's not something you're just trying to do on your own because you want to shoot a feature and get that under your belt with your friends or whatever, if you're getting paid to do it, you really should be sure that you know a lot about it. And I did my research too, but I do know a lot about editing. Thankfully, I've done plenty of it over the years. Like I said, the only thing I hadn't experienced was pushing out a copy to color. But I felt like that would be fairly simple. And it actually is the most simple thing, because
yeah,
you give them pretty much one timeline. Whereas sound, almost 1 to 2 tracks of video, because you're not layering tracks of video unless you're doing some sort of compositing,
sure.
right? For color, you're sending them like a flattened timeline. Whereas in sound, you're sending them 40, 50, 60 tracks. So it gets a little out of control.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, I'm assuming that things like that you have to just consider once you're already picture locked. Then you have to just figure out how you're gonna give it to them. Is that what
Yes.
that is, or
Uh, what do you say that again?
what I mean is like those are stuff that you have to concern yourself with after you're done with the editing process. No, or
Yes,
yes?
yes and no. That's what I was saying. If you don't set some of this stuff up from the beginning,
Sure.
you're going to struggle in the end. So, and hopefully you don't do it so wrong that it's like a complete redo. But my experience here, and this was the hardest part for me, was figuring out how I was going to edit this thing the most simply, but still be able to finish it correctly for audio, for sound. And I just did an episode on this, and unnesting nests in Premiere
Oh yeah.
was the thing that I couldn't figure out early on. And I did a ton of research before I started, because I didn't want to like do unnecessary work in the end, or have to redo the work that I did because I didn't do it right. And let me explain that quickly, I guess. And if anything, go watch my video. It's like 25 minutes long, actually. But the thing with this is, if you were going to edit this thing with the raw files, you're going to we had 6 tracks minimum. I would say on the average, 6 tracks of audio, a couple lavs, a couple booms, sometimes a track or two didn't have anything on it, depended. But then there was also 2 tracks of scratch. So I actually had 8 tracks per clip, per video clip, 8 tracks of audio.
Sure.
So if I were to pull in a section of that clip and drop down 8 tracks of audio, and then I pulled in the next clip that I'm going to cut to, and there's 8 tracks of audio. Yes, you can group them all together. And so like if you wanted to slide them a frame or two, they would all go together. But when then you want to bring in another clip to see if that one goes better as the next cut. And so you throw that on top. Now your layer of audio goes down another 8 tracks, and moving them around, it just gets really hectic. So now you have 16 to 24 tracks just for like 2 takes, right? So it gets out of control. So what I did was I nested them. So you have 1 track of video and 1 track of audio with all that stuff in it. So now if I want to put another take in there to see if it works, I could put it on video level layer 2 and audio layer 2. And if I want to try another one, I could put that on 3 and put audio on 3. So like we could move stuff around just a lot easier. And if anyone knows editing that's listening, you know what I'm talking about, where it's easier to control the situation pretty much, right? So, but in the end, the audio people can't use nested files. They need the raw files.
Of course.
And they need them all there so they can choose their lavs, they can choose their booms, and they can
Same for color.
Same for color. So they have to be unnested, right? And in order to do that, I had to research this over and
Why
over
why
because
would it be so hard to one? I've never tried it, but why would it be so hard? I
so
can't
the reason you
imagine.
can't so two things. The reason you can't just unnest is like if you have things on top of each other and you try if there was an unnest button, if you did that, it would just drop all that stuff out and it might cover up one another. Because if you have things on top of each other and you have 8 tracks of audio, if it's on track 1 and you unnest it, let's say it goes now from tracks 1 through 8, but
Sure.
before you had your first nest on track 1, you had your second nest on track 2. So if it unnests that first one and drops them out, it's going to cover up your second nest and it's gone. Right.
Ah.
So like if you try to think of it on like just a very basic
Yeah,
level, how that would
yeah,
work.
because
So
yeah.
so it just can't. It's too much of a guessing game. I don't think there isn't an unnest button, and that's why because it just doesn't work. So it
Okay.
could probably unnest one thing, but once you try to start like creating all these unnests, it's just gonna
Yeah,
like
yeah.
go haywire, and
Everything's gonna
it's
overlay
gonna be all it's gonna be overlays
over
everywhere.
everything else.
I do think that I heard that or I've read that DaVinci Resolve um, does unnesting actually, so it will figure it out somehow. But
Huh.
Premiere hasn't gotten there yet, so unfortunately, but
I think Final Cut also does that pretty well
does
with
it?
with the magnetic timeline, and it kind of like those are
Yeah,
little bubbles on the timeline that kind of like never touch
oh,
each other. It's so weird.
that is weird.
Um,
Maybe, but I've read that yeah, DaVinci does it, but Premiere doesn't. So you have to unnest. I still don't know that this is the only way to go about this. From what I've researched, it seems pretty common that this is how people do it. So in the
uh,
end, I had to unnest everything, which really isn't that difficult,
gotcha.
especially if you use what's called match frame. And
Okay.
again, go watch my video for that. We don't need to dive in that far. It's just tedious, and you just have to make sure you're lined up with all the time code on your like locked cut and your now unnested like cut as well. So that's just a whole nother process, and that took 2 days. So that was
Wow.
2 days of work
Oh,
to
of just unnesting.
just unnesting, and that was day and night for 2 days because I
Now, let me
we needed
ask
to get
you,
it done.
did you know that you were going to run into that issue beforehand?
Yes, I did. So like when I started, this is like I said, stuff I researched. I knew I was gonna have to do this in the end, and I tried to find a way around that so that I didn't have to do this, but I couldn't.
No, so did you know that it was going to take 2 days to unnest
Oh,
everything?
I knew it would take some time. I actually think that 2 days is fairly quick. To be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah.
The reason I ask is because I think even things like that, like
Yep.
syncing for a week
Yep.
and then some, and 2 days of unnesting, all those things are things that you have to consider when giving a quote
Yep.
to your client,
Yeah.
or even if, or setting your own deadlines, because I know a lot of young filmmakers, they still want to make their own features. They want to make their own films. These are the things that you have to
Oh,
consider.
man. These things drag on.
Yeah. When setting your deadlines,
Yep.
you have to know how long everything takes, and it's important. Or if you're just a director, if you're not editing yourself, understand that whoever your editor is has to go through all this stuff if they're going to do it properly.
Yep.
If you're not sending that locked timeline to a colorist, to a audio engineer, and all that stuff, things like this is it's how long it takes.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good information to have, or things to consider when taking on a project like this.
Yeah. I'll talk about how I figured out my rate for this too, because I actually don't have great advice on this, unfortunately.
Right.
Because had I tried to map this out on how long it was going to take, I think I would have quoted 2 months. Because had I sat there, you know what? Let me put it to you this way, though. I
Sure.
think that if I had 2 months straight to do it, I could have done that. But I obviously have other work going on too.
Yeah.
So it
of
took us
course.
about 4 months because I have other things going on. He had other things going on. So it took us about 4 months. So Brandon, take that into consideration. If you're sitting there and just getting after it, it's going to be a tough month, but
Right.
maybe. So, but anyways, so in my mind, I thought it was going to take 2 months, which I still think is actually pretty accurate. Like I said, had I been able to sit there for 2 straight months, I took a very reduced rate for multiple reasons. One, it's sort of family, the guy who wrote and directed it. And I like the story, although I didn't really know him prior to this. He is like step siblings brother. So like sibling's husband's brother.
Is this one of those things where a long time ago they had mentioned to you that he's into all that stuff, and then
Yep,
randomly one day
exactly.
they just
Like,
contacted you?
yeah,
That's
he's like,
usually
oh
how it
yeah,
works.
he's a writer too. He's more of a journalist,
Right. He
and
thought nothing of it from
I
a
thought
long time
nothing
ago.
of it. But he likes
That's the
movies, and
same.
he
That's
finally wrote a movie and shot it.
nice.
And he was like, and finally it got around to me. He's like, hey, I shot this movie. I'm like, oh, great. And like, he's like, I need an editor. So we started talking that way. So yeah, it's technically he's family, no, not even close to blood, but I thought it'd be nice. Like, I knew the story, I know the person, I trust him, like,
Okay.
and it'd be nice to go to festivals with family. So I reduced the rate for that
Yeah.
and it's an indie film. They don't have a full budget. So that's a consideration. I wanted to put this on my resume. I knew I could get it in the next few months.
Sure.
So it was a timing thing for me, an opportunity. We've talked
Yeah.
about that kind of stuff. And then also I got an executive producer credit as
Nice.
well, which is huge for me because I do want to be on the producing side of things. So that was important to me.
Right.
So although I didn't value it at a monetary rate that I wanted, all those other things were so important to me. And this is stuff we've talked about, how to like,
sure. Yeah. You find value in other than money. When it comes to different projects, like experience is very valuable. Experience and being able to go through this. Now that you went through this experience, now you know what you're gonna run into on your next one. If there's a next one, you know where you know how to quote them. You know what other aspects to consider that you didn't think about before.
Yep.
That stuff is super valuable when it comes to your business, because now you can give a more accurate estimation of how long it'll take, how much it's gonna cost.
Yeah, and that only comes with experience.
Right. And you have to also consider, like you said, you have to consider the projects that you currently have going on and projects that are actually coming in the near future during that whole process of editing. So it's a lot of things that you got to consider, and editing a feature is no joke. It's, it took how many months? What, 3 months total to edit?
Yeah, we're about almost
how many months in a year? 4 features, and this is just doing nothing but editing features. 4 features, that's 1 year. That's assuming that everyone is as organized as your client was.
Right.
So and you know what, I want to kind of add a little something to what I mentioned before about my feature and why it's taking so long. Just to give a little bit more of context to another reason why I'm not trying to make excuses or anything like that for the reason why this is not even like remotely close to finishing. It's because it's a documentary. So we're getting all this footage and then writing the story.
Yeah.
So
that's so different.
Right. We have a vague outline of what we want to do. But we're like, let's see what we get. Let's do all these interviews and see how we put this story together. Right. And it's on a subject that is no longer alive.
Yep.
So we kind of had to get all his close people, all his family, all his friends, the teachers that he had back in the day, and just put his story together. So that is a long process, depending on how much footage we have to work with too. So that's where we're at. We're trying to we're back and forth all the time, trying to figure this out. And it makes the editing process so much. There's been several times where I've already sat down here, tried to start editing. It's so hard to put this story together while editing. So we kind of have to brainstorm all this footage, things I've never done before. And this is, that's one of the things where, I kind of stepped into this, never having done it before, the proper way. So in the middle of this whole process, I've been actually trying to finesse my storytelling abilities, like telling stories and stuff like that, taking it to a whole nother level. And then I started realizing, man, I should have done that before starting this project. So things like that is what I didn't consider before starting this long process of shooting and creating this feature. So we're trying to make things.
Well, I could give, I guess, more advice on that too. So I'm also involved in a documentary that I shot that took about 10 months. So I was DP on it.
Crap.
10 months of shooting. And I actually turned down the edit for a good monetary value. And that was all it was a monetary value on it, a rate that I turned down because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I could tell that story. And that was before I did this narrative. So so that's what I'm talking about, like really looking at yourself and understanding, like being honest with yourself. Like, can you physically do it? Can you tell this story? And the documentary style, like we were just talking about, was we captured everything. And I had been so close to it that I thought I was going to struggle to tell the story because
Sure.
I'd seen so much. I didn't know what would be interesting to the people outside of me, you know, who have fresh eyes on it. Um, so I turned it down. I turned down really good money actually to do that. Because it wasn't, you know, it wasn't about making a buck. It was, I wanted to help. I want the story to be good. I just spent almost a year
Sure.
on it. So, you know, I turned that down. So, but it just goes back to, like you're saying, what do you consider? And in that situation, I considered that I don't think I could tell the story to the best that it can be. So I'm gonna,
Yeah.
like, let's find another editor.
Yeah,
So,
there have been some huge projects that people have considered me for, and I've turned some down. If this would have been somebody approaching me to do this project and having me head this project, I
right.
probably would have turned it down. But this is a project. This is a passion project. This is something that I wanted to do, and it wasn't my story; it's the director's story. But we kind of partnered up and to do this. And this is why, you know, okay, we were able to say, okay, let's do it. I mean, we're going to do it ourselves. You know, we have nobody to keep accountable right now. The only thing that's keeping me driven is my word that we're going to do it. And yeah, and that we partnered up and we've been announcing it and something like that. So this is definitely something we're going to finish.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, if it was like a feature length and things like that, and someone's trying to give me money to do it, I would be way more skeptical about that with regards to accepting the project or not. So
Right.
that you definitely want to consider. It just makes sense. You know, don't try to accept it for the experience if you don't think that you're ready, because you know.
Yeah, I know, and that's funny 'cause you're saying that because we say, you know, accept it and figure it out later.
Yeah. Okay.
There is a
Yes.
line to be drawn there. Like
For sure.
you
Definitely.
have to be able. If someone said, "Hey, can you? I need you to 3D model, you know, a spaceship." I can't do that. You know, even though I could look
Right.
it up and try to figure out the technical side of it, I
Sure.
can't do that. I'm not an artist. Like I can't do that. So
Yeah.
like I wouldn't accept that, you know? So there is a limit, there's a line that you can't cross, of course,
Yeah.
but if it's something that you are involved in and you know a little bit about at least, like, and you think you can figure it out,
Yeah.
those are the things we're talking about.
Small stuff, guys. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that is, yeah, that can get very dangerous. Um, Especially if you're starting to bring contracts into place.
Yeah, yeah.
uh
If you can't come
yeah,
through.
I'm a huge advocate of, you know, say yes and figure it out later.
Yep.
But you're right, there is a line to be drawn. If it's a huge project with a huge budget,
Yeah.
be way more skeptical about those kinds of projects before accepting them. Do more research than a couple of hours.
Yeah.
Really, and if you're ever in doubt, meaning if it's so much money and you're ever in doubt, and you just cannot come to a comfortable conclusion where you feel like you can figure it out, just be on the safe side, I would say, because you really don't want to be at the on the side where, like, you know, you accept all this money and then you really just can't deliver.
Yeah.
That I don't think there's
Yeah, I
anything
mean,
worse. I don't think
yeah,
that.
at that level too, it's like you could potentially get, you know, lawsuits could come into play if you're
Yeah.
signing stuff and there's good money involved and you can't follow through. They might be able to get that money back from you if you don't hand it back over to them. But you know, if you're spending money on crew and stuff and you end up like goofing it all up, yeah, they can come after you and probably try to get that money back. So it's gonna end up costing you money. So
On the other hand, they really shouldn't be offering you that kind of stuff if you haven't done it before.
right,
So that's why usually the offers sometimes come with the level of expertise that you have.
right.
So yeah, so I think it goes both ways.
No.
If I was a business person, this person's never done this before, and I have a lot of money to invest, I'm gonna give the money to someone
They're gonna do their research too.
Come on now. So yeah, there's there's that end. So I haven't been offered something that I didn't think I was. I've been uncomfortable, but that's as far as I've gone. I've been
Sure.
slightly uncomfortable. And then, you know, I do my research and I'm able to figure it out. But yeah, no, it's those offers shouldn't let me say shouldn't be coming if you're not even remotely close to doing stuff like that at that level. So there's that.
Amen.
All right, man. I mean, is there anything else? So I mean, I think, did you cover everything? Like, is there anything else, anything that surprised you during this process that that you were not expecting?
Um,
Everything.
not really once I got going. Like I said,
Sure.
I knew there were a couple things early, getting into it that I was concerned about, that I did my due diligence prior to it. So I knew what was going to happen down the line. Like had I not known about that unnesting thing, that would have been a huge surprise. But I knew that was going to happen. I was just praying that by the time I got to the end of it, I learned that there's a better way to unnest. But there's just,
Yeah.
I mean, I did in a sense, like instead of going into each one and copying and pasting each section
Sure.
of that clip, I learned a quicker way to do that. So that helped a lot. But no, I
How
can't think of anything that really like slapped me in the face like I wasn't ready for.
so how many when you quoted your client, you
Yep.
quoted on a per day basis, on
No,
a
I
per month?
did a fixed rate, like
Sure.
almost like a monthly rate. Because like I said,
Gotcha.
I knew it was going to be 2 months, and he was also obviously very lenient with me being able to do other work. So I took that into
Sure.
consideration too. It's like,
Yeah.
well, I don't have that pressure of I can't do other work,
Okay.
so I could take a smaller rate or a lower rate because it helps us both out. I can make some money, get this film in, but I could still keep my clients going.
And did you have more or less an idea of how long it would take you, all things that surprised you into consideration? Like, how did it take longer
Yes.
than you expected because of things that you didn't consider?
No,
Okay.
it took longer because of other work and stuff going on,
Sure. Okay.
but not so much because of things I didn't consider.
Okay.
I knew it would take a while. I was thinking, I think our original first, I think you know how it went in film. This always happens, or at least with I don't want to say passion projects because this is a paid project that he
Sure.
has money behind, but it is his passion project, and it's not like the deadlines aren't set in stone because we have to get it to a client. The deadlines are maybe festivals, but even with that, we want to make it the best film first. If
Uh-huh.
we miss this a festival because it's not ready, it's not ready. Like
Sure.
we're not pushing it out there just because the festivals come along.
There you go.
So which is a good point to make too, when you're getting into stuff like this.
That's good.
If there's a lot of money involved, there could be an actual deadline,
Right,
because
right.
people have money invested.
Yeah, because you
Um,
have investors.
right. And there's investors in this, but it was laid out to the point that this is not going to be rushed by any means. It should be ready around this time, and we're on schedule. So, but I think our first original deadline was April 1st.
Okay.
Not deadline, but where we thought we'd have a locked edit. I wouldn't say like fully locked picture. I think that was our first pass, like our rough cut, let's say.
Okay.
I think April 1st. I don't think we had that until late April.
Okay.
So almost a month longer. And then we didn't get a locked picture cut until about 2.5 weeks into May. So even from the rough cut, it still took another like 2.5 weeks of like kind of like screenings per se. Some people chiming in, like, and we had a consulting editor come in that worked on the trailer, and then just us going through the film and nitpicking. So that took another 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
Just going from the rough cut to the lock cut took 2.5 weeks because we just went through and fine tuned.
Did you edit proxies
No,
or no?
no.
It was all the raw files.
Yeah, no, I did raw files on my desktop here. Pushed them through.
Nice.
I mean, I was at a quarter res or an eighth res, but it still looks clean when playing back.
Right, right, right. Because
So,
when you're cutting up, that's really, it doesn't
yeah,
matter. It
no.
doesn't matter the color or anything
But
like
dude,
that.
I mean, even like when we would screen it for ourselves, just play it back,
Sure.
and I push it out to my TV, so which is a 4K TV, but still when dropping down to a quarter, I think these are 4K files, so dropping down to a quarter is 1080. It still looked like perfectly clean on there for the most.
Sure.
I mean,
Right, right, right.
I wouldn't say 4K clean, but it looked 1080 clean.
Sure, sure.
And
Yeah,
we were playing it straight through, no proxies, no problem
yeah.
on my computer, which I was pumped about. So like the money I've spent on this computer did good for me in this project because we were just watching the raw files, which is great. So that's another thing though, proxies, creating proxies, which I didn't have to do.
Yeah.
but that's another process that you might want to look into before you get
Yeah.
involved.
So I don't think I've ever
Worked
edited
in
with
proxies. I
proxies.
haven't either, because thankfully I've had a strong enough computer.
Does Premiere give the option? Does it do it directly in Premiere?
Yeah, you can like start it up as you import. It can automatically create the proxies.
Huh.
Yeah, you can do all that.
I'll
You'd have
play
to
with
set
that.
it up in your like preferences and stuff. It can
Gotcha.
create it on an import.
Maybe I'll do that for my laptop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because my computer is usually okay. I've never had an issue with
I
slow
think you can
playback.
I think you can pull them in and it starts the proxies and you can work off the file the raw files until they're done. So it's like you don't have to
Yeah.
do the whole conversion and wait for that to happen to
Sure.
start editing, but you're still going to have your lag obviously. If you have any lag with that, you're just going to be working with that lag. But
Yeah, I've never had an issue with my desktop computer. The playback has always been great. It's yeah, my laptop usually is what glitches oftentimes, but no, it's usually good. I was just wondering. I hear it all the time. I guess it'll work for some people.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've never tried it because it's just another step in
Yeah.
editing, another
That the doc
process.
I'm talking about was fully edited on a laptop off proxies because I
Okay,
handed him the raw files and he crunched them all down to proxies so he can do it on
gotcha.
the go. He could do it at home. I think he did maybe plug in at home.
Sure.
I think he plugged into just another monitor so he still work off his laptop because he works for CBS as well. So he's
Okay.
just here and there and jumping around. So he'd on his lunch break take out his laptop and work for an hour or so. Um, so yeah, he was off fully off proxies, a
Yeah.
full feature length doc. So
Nice.
yeah.
That's awesome, dude. Man, this was a great episode.
Yeah, this went a lot longer than I thought.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
12,
Before
10. Oh my
before we
god.
started, we were actually concerned that you weren't gonna have there wasn't gonna be a lot to talk about. But man,
Um,
I personally learned a lot off that. That's really, really cool. Great experience that you went through, great project. And I think we were able to get a lot of information that people should consider when accepting big projects like this because editing a feature film is no joke, as I mentioned earlier. We got Brandon over here freaking out on our super chat room here. He's about to edit. He's talking about.
I'm trying to calculate in my head. He said over 100 scenes in 30 days. That's a 33 plus scenes.
Oh
Wait,
God.
what am I saying here? Hold on. 100 scenes, 30 days. So 3 scenes a day. I
Oh
mean,
God.
I couldn't even sync 3 scenes a day. It felt like. So, oh man, Brandon,
Brandon.
I'm not trying to put you down, man. I go for it, but just beware.
He also says that he has 4 other
Other
projects next
projects.
month.
Yeah.
Come on, dude. 4 other projects. How's that, brother? I'll be praying for you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he'll be back on here, so keep us updated.
Yeah, keep us updated, buddy. Well, I mean, this is great episode, man. Just to remind everybody, we are on YouTube live doing this episode. So if you were not here, you missed out on being able to chat with us live, ask your questions. Mr. Saratelli just laid off a lot of information, a lot of knowledge to think about for editing feature film, all that stuff. Go over to the iFilmmaker YouTube channel, subscribe, get notified every time we go live. Don't forget, Jersey Filmmaker also has his YouTube channel, and this is a great follow-up to go check out his the 25-minute video that you just did on the entire
part
project.
3 on part 3.
Oh crap! So this is
yes.
So you did a whole series on the editing. Okay.
I did, yeah, editing a feature.
So, editing a feature. Check that out, Jersey Filmmaker YouTube channel.
And there's 2 more to come. I'm gonna do one when like
God.
sound and color come back and how to finalize and stuff like that.
There you go. Yeah, we might have a follow-up episode on this, and we'll see if we can get more information on this stuff. So this is a really cool project to follow. But yeah, go check that out. We are also on Facebook, iFilmmaker Podcast. We're on Instagram at iFilmmaker Podcast. Myself is Ariel Martinez at I'm sorry, Ariel Martinez.tv. Then you have at Jersey Filmmaker. Go check that out. Stay connected, stay live, and join us on the next episode of the iFilmmaker Podcast. All right, Mr. Saratelli.
All right. Later.
Dude.